Bela's bringing some life to the party. Here's your spooky spot on the Jada Toys Universal Monsters Bela Lugosi Dracula. This spectacularly sculpted action figure features Bela Lugosi in his unique and iconic portrayal as Count Dracula, as seen in the classic stage play. This highly detailed 6-inch scale of the stage and silver screen star has 2 detailed head sculpts, 3 sets of hands, miniature replica poster handbills, and the wired cape to allow for dynamic posing. All of this comes packaged in a highly collectible closed box coffin packaging with sliding drawer. Bela Lugosi is Dracula, and he bids you welcome. When actors go on stage, the others hope they break a leg, but in Dracula's case, he hopes you break a leg so you can't run as fast. Of course, before we get a closer look at the Jada Toys Bela Lugosi Dracula, now this is the stage version of Dracula. I'm going to go ahead and grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. I did actually grab this one over on Entertainment Earth. I'll provide the link down below in the video description if you guys have been interested to grab this one and haven't had any luck to find this one out in the spooky wild. You can click the link down below in the video description. Dracula, though, stands 6 inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 15.5 centimeters tall. And while it would certainly make for scary stage hands, here's some of the other Jada Toys Universal Monster figures we've already had a look at. Now, this is the regular version of Dracula that doesn't bear as much of a resemblance, I feel, to actor Bela Lugosi. You'll be happy to know as well that you can change the heads between the two. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Also as well, here's what he looks like with the Universal Monsters Frankenstein, the creature from the Black Lagoon we'll put to the side here. The Wolfman. Recently, in fact, we also had a look at the Invisible Man. And then also as well, we can't forget the Bride of Frankenstein. Here's also what he looks like with her as well. Can I just first say how much I love the packaging that comes included with Dracula? I mean, normally you just get yourself regular packaging, but featured on the front here, we've got actually the symbol of Lugosi himself with some really cool bat wings on either side. We've got Dracula down below here, but the really interesting thing about this is the amount of effort that they put into making this packaging. Jada Toys also adds, for example, like a magnet enclosure, so you just easily open up the flap, and inside, first of all, we're treated to sort of a wall face with all of the marquees sort of indicated here with some posters that they put up. There's also a lamp post as well. The inside, though, where actually Lugosi was housed, was part of a coffin, and that's really neat the way they've done that. But also, if you look to the side here, this drawer also pulls out. This was the thing that stored as well his extra hands, his extra head, and his cape. And then also has some interior padding looking as if it looked like like a casket. Really some interesting, some of the best packaging, I have to honestly say, that we've gotten here is from Jada Toys. Of course, as we already looked at sort of with the way that the brick was set up, the wall actually had all these cool little posters, and you get these also as well. The poster here has Bela Lugosi Dracula, the screen's master of horror, in person on the stage. We also get some slightly smaller ones. I'm honestly not even sure what I'm going to really be doing with these. I guess I probably could maybe mount these behind, for example, the figure itself. We also got Bela Lugosi in person and company, the Horror and Magic stage show. 13 scenes. I can't quite make out all the thing. You might be able to see it a little bit better here on camera. Also have some slightly smaller posters. This seems to be also a pamphlet that was probably given out to the patrons that were able to check out the show. And also you got yourself some smaller posters there as well. Again, the fact that they would even take the time to throw in as many things as they do. Very, very cool stuff. Then we get also as well an alternate head sculpt. I guess just before we do that, let's look at the alternate hands. He also comes with, again, some mauling hands. I was jokingly say these look like mauling hands, but what other way would you describe these hands? Arthritic hands? Mauling hands, I think, sounds a little more menacing. These have been cast in a way that they sort of look a little off-colored, like maybe some of the life is leaving his body. I'm sure with it being really Dracula, the life has already left his body. These easily can just be detached from existing hands from the forms, like we're milking a cow, and then just pop in the other hands. And then the figure also as well comes included with these hands. Now, to go back to the posters that we looked at earlier, if you wanted to, and if you consider this more to be Bela Lugosi the actor and not as Dracula, then you could also then just take these posters and they clip in between the fingers. Now, the thing about it, though, is that you really want to make sure that you're bending the finger properly. The few times that I've actually done this, you can probably already see, it starts to bend and crumple the cardboard. So you want to maybe make sure that you maybe pry this a little bit more away from the palm, because again, like he holds it, but anytime I've done this already, it already has now started to crumple the cardboard. I really don't want to damage these, but there's always that option available as well. Now, we also had, I already mentioned the figure does also come included with an alternate head sculpt. All right. Before we actually do that, let's pick up the existing figure with the head already attached in place to the ball joint provided. I will say, though, it lands a better likeness to Bela Lugosi. Whereas, say before, when we looked at the original Dracula, I don't know if the plan was ever to really make this look like a Bela Lugosi Dracula, but of course it came up a little bit short. It didn't quite deliver, I felt, the likeness, where this one lands it a lot better. Head sculpt-wise, very nicely painted. Again, you got that off-coloring of the plastic, painted in purple around the eye shadowing of his eyes, and he's got a slightly more off-pink color to it, the coloring of his lips. Now, whereas the original Dracula that we looked at, again, doesn't really look as much like Bela Lugosi. It's sort of more of a suggested Bela. He also as well came included with this alternate head sculpt, which looks even further removed from being a Bela Lugosi likeness, but there's always that available option as well. The outfits, if you were to say look at them, are very differently done. This one, of course, has the collar with the little pendant there in the middle. This one has more just a classic bow tie. He's definitely dressed more for a stage show than maybe sucking somebody's blood. Now, the neat thing about that, though, is if you did want to change out the head sculpts, because, of course, with Bela, you actually get two different head portraits. You could really pop the one that's off this one and replace it with, say, this head sculpt, which, again, kind of is definitely a more angrier-looking Bela Lugosi, I would certainly say. Changing out the heads, though, again, because they're using the same ball joint, just pop the head off the provided ball joint from this figure, and then we'll just put in the new head sculpt here as the alternate head sculpt that came included with the other one. Now, you want to make sure it's all the way down there. It does sort of give a little bit of a gap space. But if just to show you the two, I mean, if you wanted to have two versions of Bela Lugosi, or hey, why not, if you want to use this head on this one, and then use this one on this one, well, you already get the idea. So I really like the idea that they actually used, maybe not the same body necessarily. The jacket seems to be the same, as well as the arms and the legs and feet. And while the torso was very, very differently done here with the sculpting of the shirt and the vest underneath, yeah, I mean, easily you could just use this head sculpt for this one, or vice versa. Now, this original vampire, this original Dracula, actually had the red interior cape. This one being the stage show, though, what he actually does get instead is an interior silver cape. It's a little off because I'm always considering more Dracula with his silver inside cape, but I mean, kind of a little bit different. Of course, we get a gray cape this time around. Attaching the cape, I will say, is not the easiest thing. You get this little plastic strand. You see it goes from one side of the cape to the other. I don't really think it's nearly enough wide. So, I mean, like if, for example, you want to take the head off, that's the only way you're going to be able to get the cape on. You'll see that you really have to kind of stretch it to get it across the neck. And even then, the collar's really close to what will be where his head's going to go. I find it sort of easiest just to kind of put it where you could kind of get it the closest and then just attach the head on top of it. Now, it's going to crimp that plastic, but if you're never really planning to remove it, I mean, I'm sure repeated times of doing this may start to fray the plastic, but it does a good enough job of keeping everything in place. And then, of course, you just put the cape, like the actual shoulder piece of the cape, over top of them. You want to make sure while you're also doing as well that the collar doesn't get tucked in by accident. I've already had that happen a couple of times already. I mean, the cape does lend a little bit better to the look of Dracula. I mean, it doesn't just look like necessarily somebody is attending a stage show. It looks a little bit more like somebody that could potentially take your life. And one thing that's also really neat about the cape is the fact that it actually has a wire frame. So it runs from the top here. I'm going to get my blasted finger out of the way. It runs from the top here all the way down the side. And it also runs along the bottom here as well, very nicely stitched in place. So, of course, you can also bend the cape and manipulate it a little bit differently also as well. Boy, that looks really, really neat. And again, like as simple as it is to attach onto the head, even though the strip of the plastic that they provided wasn't nearly wide enough, it's just as easy then to remove it if you want to have it displayed without the cape. What I'll do maybe for right now is I'm just going to take the cape off after talking all about that, just because, again, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to look at the figure and, of course, cover off all the details, certainly, and as well the posability points as well. Now, of course, the jacket itself seems to be a separate piece. I can move it out of the way so you guys can see. I mean, to look at this, in a way, it kind of looks like it's a black and white version of him until you realize that, of course, he's got the purple in his eyes and the pink already mentioned in his lips. He also has as well a gold chain. But, I mean, with really the way they've colored the actual vest, the way they've actually colored, of course, the jacket in black, and the fact that the interior of the cape is silver, really lends more to the idea that this guy could come across more like black and white. Unfortunately, one thing about the jacket, and I may have already mentioned that when we looked at the review of the other Dracula, is by leaving this much allotted space on the side to accommodate his arm articulation, it does, as a result, you can kind of see the inside of where his shirt is. See the little white areas are kind of peeking out. Other than that, though, it's a really neat looking figure. Still using the same mold as what we got before. Still has, again, peg holes in the underside of the figure's feet, but we definitely get a considerably better likeness to Bela Lugosi. If, again, the original one was really to be planned as a Bela Lugosi likeness, this one definitely does a better job of doing that. For the figure's articulation, starting once again with his head sculpt, it does rotate all the way around. Head looks up and down. You can also rock it back and forth as well. Now the arms, because of course there's so much clearance inside there, you can rotate them very easily all the way around. You can also bring the arms out. Now bringing them out, I can't get them. This arm is the more stubborn of the two. This arm easily comes out at 90 degrees. No problems there. But this is the one that really, really fights with me. Can't get it, but it's a lot tighter on this one. The figure does have a swivel in his bicep. That's also the same on this side as well. Figure has a double hinge on the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around. Now, the upper torso seems to be on a ball joint, but you really can't get a lot of movement happening from it. The legs, on the other hand, though, do split very easily because he has the ball joints on the interiors of his thighs. 3/4 of the way up the thigh, there's also swivel cuts, so you can rotate the leg all the way around. The figure does have a double hinge on the knee, and he also has the articulation in the feet, back and forth as well. Comparing, of course, the obviously two figures, I'm just going to put Bela Lugosi's stage version of Dracula right there and bring in the earlier looked at Dracula, now with the Bela Lugosi head sculpt. Really between the two, I think, again, like, this is a better looking head sculpt, even though really, like, when we got the two heads, actually, it's this head sculpt here. This whole time, I popped out the head. I put the wrong head back in place. This whole time, I'm sure many people have been screaming at me, put the wrong Bela Lugosi head back in place. I was going to say, something did certainly seem off. That makes more sense. Anyways, like I was saying, though, you do get two head sculpts here when it comes to Bela Lugosi. This one I definitely feel is the better of the two, especially now that I had the chance to replace it. I mean, don't get the two mixed up. Clearly, this is definitely more the one that, well, we started with that doesn't really, again, look as much like the actor. This one looks a lot more like the actor. I wonder how long into the review I was actually having the wrong head sculpt in place. Now, again, you get this alternate head sculpt, which, to be honest, doesn't look as much like the actor as this one. But I do think that both of them are still considerably better than the two head sculpts we initially started with when we looked at the Jada Toys Universal Monsters Dracula. So again, one of the benefits of using essentially the same bodies, and because of that, also the same ball joints in the necks, it means also as well that you can then use one of the other alternate head sculpts that came included with this guy being this one, and just easily pop it over there. Or hey, why not? If you want a more classic looking movie Dracula, do away altogether with the idea of him going and performing on stage. Rather, instead, you can use this head sculpt on this Dracula and have a true classic universal release of Bela Lugosi. Here in the final looks of the stage performance Bela Lugosi Dracula, I've got the figure displayed with his alternate head sculpt, and honestly, of the two, I think it's the weaker portrait. The other one that we started with that I ended up mixing up in the middle of the review, how many people actually called me out of that in the comments section? But I think, honestly, that's the better of the two head sculpts, and so very tempted, in fact, to actually use that Bela Lugosi portrait and display it with more the colorized version of Dracula that we looked at before. Jada, I'm sure, had good intentions to sculpt that original Dracula to bear a better likeness of Bela Lugosi, but maybe due to licensing, they probably didn't have the rights available right away. That at least we get a better release here, a subsequent follow-up release with the one that we get here. Now, not only is it looking a great looking figure, but also as well, I mean, when we looked at the packaging, I mean, the fact that they would actually take the time to make them look like caskets, and then you'd actually be able to pull out the drawer to store the accessories inside, that's a lot of additional work that Jada didn't even have to put in place in the first place. I mean, they could have just released them easily the way they've released all the other Universal monsters. But I think Bela Lugosi deserved better, and he certainly did get better from Jada. Now, when it comes to certainly displaying the figure, now that I've accurately got the figure with the right head sculpt. Now, one thing that's also missing here in the final looks of the figure is the additional posters. Now, the posters, again, can be clipped inside of his gripping hands. The thing you have to be careful, though, is we want to make sure that you heat the hands in probably not hot water, because, again, if you left some water on the plastic, it would probably have damaged the posters. But maybe heat it a little bit with a hairdryer. That's the sound of a hairdryer. Make a few passes with at least a hairdryer to soften up the plastic just a little bit, because I think if the grip is a little too closed on the hands, you ultimately will mean that you'll pinch a bit of the cardboard on the actual posters, and I definitely don't want that happening. Maybe ultimately what I might just do is put the posters behind Bela Lugosi when I put them on the shelf with the rest of the Universal monsters. Now, you may be ultimately deciding to have Bela separately, considering that what we looked at in this review really is the actor. It isn't so much Dracula, because, of course, this is Dracula on the stage performance. But I'm all for the idea of displaying this guy not only with the other Dracula we've already had a look at, but the rest of the cool Universal monsters that we've gotten from Jada Toys. What do you guys think, though, of the theater performance, Bela Lugosi Dracula? Have you had the chance to get this figure for yourself? And if you are displaying this figure on your shelf currently, do you have him displayed as the actor, or do you have him being displayed as the character Dracula? I mean, certainly that would dictate how you have... I don't think Dracula's really going to be walking around posters with his face on it, unless he wants to be handing out signatures. Although I don't know, whatever the guy's charging for art autographs, I don't think he'd be willing to offer it, because I'm sure he'd want you to sign it in blood. Not his blood either, your own blood. Again, if you guys are interested to get this one for yourself, it is available as of right now over on Entertainment Earth. That's in fact the place where I end up finding. Initially I actually was looking around at places online like eBay, but the prices that this guy was going for, honestly, ultimately, I just end up finding him for a much better price over on Entertainment Earth. And by also as well using the link that I'll provide down below in the video description, it does save you 10%. And I have to honestly admit, I did use the link myself, and I did save 10% on my purchase. But again, if you guys are interested and would like to get this one for yourself, you can click the link down below that will take you on over to Entertainment Earth. What do you guys think, though, of Bela Lugosi? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe, and make sure, of course, you're turning on the bell notification so you're going to get those reminders every single time a new video posts. What's that? You want some more spooky related videos? Haha, you've read the script. Definitely you'll be happy to know that there's going to be more spooky related videos coming your way, even though really we are wrapping up the remaining of Spottober. It does not mean that we aren't going to be carrying maybe into November. I could still see us probably looking at some spooky videos. So if that's the kind of thing, I'd like to think you're coming back here on a regular basis anyways. But if specifically you like to come back during the October season, just know that we may be looking at, okay, guaranteed, we are going to be looking at some more spooky videos for well over October. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.